All right, here is my attempt at the underground mining Excel Esports case. So to start with, I'm going to combine the ore table and the metal table, right? Just by looking up the metals. And then this is, the metal price and metal density. So I put that stuff in. And put that right there. Now I can look up all the data I need for each of these questions this way. First level here is just asking for, one of these, right? Um, the second level, I'm going to start tracking the metal and the rock separately. They have a different price and weight because the ore, right, which is this big thing, consists of useless rock and metal. The price of the metal is a lot, and the price of the ore, the rock, is negative 25 euros per ton. So if I say what the total weight is going to be 1 ton, right? So, this times this and this times 1 minus this is the weight of each component. And then the value of the whole thing, right, is some product of the price and the weight. And this has to get rounded to 2 digits. Not necessary for the example, but it is necessary for some of the others. All right, for here, I'm going to need to figure out what I got the density and the volume, right? So here's the weight in tons, and here's the volume in cubic meters, right? The density of the metal is given up here. The density of the rock is always 5 tons per cubic meter, according to the instructions. So just divide there and then round the sum of this to 2 decimal places to get the total volume of each ore. All right. Here I'm going to change the total weight. So instead of being 1, it's going to be, 1 over this, because that's going to give me 1 ton of the metal, which is what this question's specifying, right? So now I should have everything I need. What am I looking for? The time to extract it. Okay, so here's the total volume in cubic meters is the sum of that. The days to mine it is the number of days times the volume. Seconds to mine, seconds to prep. That's probably it, right? So seconds to mine is the number of days times 24 times 60 times 60. And then the seconds to prep, this confused me a bit also, right? Is sealing the total volume. So first of all, sealing the total volume, then that times 5 minutes, right? 300 seconds. So now that I've got that, I want to round the sum of the seconds here to the nearest second. So now I've got the nearest second, and I got to convert that back to days by dividing by 24 times 60 times 60 will give me this. That doesn't look like the answers do, right? But like this, once you put in the fraction of a day, right, Excel converts it to minutes and seconds. So here, the tricky part is I don't know the total weight ahead of time. So this I'm just going to call a guess for the total weight and total volume. And then I'm going to multiply by a scaling factor and get the actual total weight and total volume. Same thing for that. These are just guesses now. And then I'm going to put the actual ones over here, right? So what do I need is I need to turn this total volume into 1, right? So I need to, there's a scale factor, right? Everything's got to get scaled up by 1 over this. So I just do all of these numbers times this locked in place. And that scales it up now so that the total weight is there, right? And the total volume is exactly 1, which is what I want. So now the days to mine and the seconds to mine and the seconds to prepare are all based on the correct thing. The labor cost is the total number of seconds, first of all. So seconds plus seconds. So now I've got the seconds that the workers are working times, or well, divided by 60, divided by 60 again to get the hours, right? So that's the hours that they worked times 43.4 euros per hour is the euro cost, right? The revenue is the same as level 3, right? Some product of the price of those and their actual final weight. And then the profit, I'm going to put profit here unrounded, is the revenue minus the labor cost minus the extraction cost. So now I round this to 0, right, to get the answers to level 5. Level 6 is asking me about profit. Level 7 is asking me about weight. So I got to get some lambdas here to do this, right? So first, with OA Robot, I have to create input cells, right? So it knows not to go all the way back to where I'm looking that up from. But the profit, I'll do save lambda as, and it's like, oh my God, your lambda's too big. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's a big lambda. But that's what OA Robot's for. All right, so this is profit per cubic meter. And then the weight is here, right? So this is, tons of metal per cubic meter. Per cubic meter of ore, right? That's the tricky part of this. All right, so now we got to grab all this stuff, right? So x2 calls just a little lambda that will filter out the blanks. So that's this. It's what? It's 30 seams. How much is in each seam? 90 something? 92? All right, so I need to know what seam it is, what the ore is, what the purity is, and what the profit is, and that's it. All right, so the seam is X sequence from 1 to 30, repeating each element 92 times. Good. The ore is the index of the ore list, right? So there's my ore list locked with F4. And then I need to base it on the hex to des of the leftmost 3 hex digits of this, right? That's a number divided by 40, and that's probably it, right? Hex to des of the left, got to do that parentheses goes there like this. Yep. Purity is hex to des of the right 3 digits of this, divided by 40. Actually, let's do divided by 4,000 because it's got between 0 and 1, right? So then the profit per cubic meter is just this. So now I sum filter of all the profit based on what seam it is, right? So the seam has to be equal to the seam number. And that is per cubic meter. So I multiply by 2 times 20, 2 high, 2 long, 20 deep. And the whole thing is going to get rounded to the nearest euro. And that should be level 6. See how we're doing so far. Level 6, 5 and 6 look good. So now we're ready for level 7. Here, I don't care about the profit. Instead, I care about the mass, right? So the mass is tons, what did I call it? Yeah, tons of metal for this ore and this purity. You can actually just add up the purity numbers, which is what I did the first time. That gets you 95% of the answers correct, but it gets you one of them wrong. So this, if you want to get it right, you got to have a macro or a lambda or some way to figure out the actual mass. All right, so now I've got my seams and I've got I need the metal number actually. The metal name is not here. That's the other thing I'm missing. So the name of the metal is based on the ore, of course. So we look that up on here, returning here. Now, if I make a little pivot table, right? So for every seam, for all the metals, I'm going to add up all the masses. And then for each one, I'm going to look up the biggest, right? So the biggest amount of tons on the seam number locked, right? So I do this for all the different metals. Then level 7 is XLOOKUP, the metal name on these metals, returning on the seam number, and if it's missing, 0, right, according to the instructions. C4 to S4, make that C2 to S2. No, B, B. We need B. There we go. B is where the example answer was. All right, so hopefully we have 1,000 points. Oh, there's no point total on this. Well, they all look right, so you're going to have to believe me, it's 1,000 points. All right, what metal is the highest market price? So the biggest of this returning on here. How often does the most common metal appear? So I've got my little frequency table subroutine for that, and it is 7 times. So 1 cubic meter at 100% purity. So what is the profit, right? So the profit of the ore at 100% purity is here. So equals round the sum of this to 0 decimal places, nearest 0. What ore is in sheet 1 the most? Well, grab all these and look at the frequency table, and I can see it as this one. And then for the second one, right, the numbers are not here, so I've got to use my little right background color. All right, so I'm going to do that, and then all these white ones are in the way, right? So FFFFFF is going to get replaced and with nothing, because otherwise it's going to mess up my table. So just do this and these. There's actually a spelling error here. There's supposed to be 2 L's, but there's only 1. So I'm just going to call these C1 and C2. And then this, if I make a new one here, and this then becomes C2, right? And then the OR, now instead of left 3, I'm going to do mid 2, 3. Yep. First time I did this, I did find and replace on the pound sign, but that actually caused problems because then it wanted to interpret those as interpret the decimal ones as numbers, and it was a mess. All right, there we go. This is done. Thanks, bye.